The following Panacea production is intended as a non-profit research report. Panacea is acting in order to bring this subject matter to the attention of faculties, governments, and the general public. There have been a vast amount of obstacles that have stopped this technology from complete public access. All the individuals involved have suffered trying to get this knowledge known publicly. There is a repeatable pattern which prevents it from progress, and the suppression of this progress has profound implications for sustainability on this planet. It is our aim to illustrate, by their experiences, how the current system has not worked and offer a solution and gain support for this solution.
The plane is airborne at 1:15 p.m. The aircraft will make a single thrust due east for a period of 20 minutes. At 1:52, the plane is back from its mission, the pilot coming in for a debriefing. He reports rain around Waialua and over towards Haleiwa. It has pleased him. And at 2:16, beyond the runway over towards Haleiwa, we see it is indeed raining, and it is time to get a bird's eye view of what's going on.
Born in New Zealand in 1925, Trevor James Constable engaged a long career at sea which spanned nearly half a century, lasting from World War II until 1992. After finishing high school, he joined the New Zealand Merchant Marine for a year, followed with the British Merchant Marine for 5 years, and after immigrating to the United States in 1952, sailed for 26 years with the US Merchant Marine as a radio officer. He plied the North Atlantic with the British in the late 40s aboard the famed Queen Mary and completed more than 300 crossings of the North Pacific aboard the SS Maui, the ship upon which he conducted many of his famous weather engineering experiments utilizing the multi-tube cloudbuster originally invented by Willhelm Reich, and later his own geometrical waterless designs based on the Etheric principles expounded by Rudolf Steiner and Gunther Waldschmuth. Trevor has produced 10 non-fiction books, many well known to aficionados of famous fighter races, which earned him an international reputation as an aviation historian and world-renowned author of German and Allied fighter pilots of World War II. Trevor's documentation of the extraordinary advancements in the healing arts discovered by Dr. Ruth Drown and her subsequent persecution by the government is also unique, not to mention his elaboration of the new knowledge brought forth by Rudolf Steiner and Willhelm Reich, among others, whose discoveries could herald a renewed renaissance for all of mankind if more widely known and embraced. Trevor James Constable began investigating the etheric force starting with the orgone discovery by Willhelm Reich, MD. The term orgone, which is another name for the etheric force, was coined by Willhelm Reich in the early 1940s to describe a form of universal background radiation, or energy, that he had discovered. Over the next 14 years, Reich made many significant scientific discoveries of how it functioned in nature and the human body. One of these, in 1952, was his invention of a device he called a cloudbuster. This device was tested and shown to be able to drain off stale, toxic forms of orgone, which he called deadly orgone energy, from the atmosphere and restore normal meteorological behavior to areas afflicted with droughts and other atmospheric problems. Reich's tests discovered that droughts were as a direct cause of human activity, including as a direct result of the use of nuclear weapons and other electromagnetic interference. Cloud busting was in Reich's days the use of this instrument, utilizing orgone energy to facilitate these detectable changes in the weather. Perhaps the best modern independent scientific validation of Reich's orgonomy has been done by modern researcher James DeMaio, PhD. James is founder of the non-profit Orgone Biophysics Lab. The existence of the etheric medium, or as called by Reich, orgone, used in weather engineering, is not a new discovery. Despite the term orgone being coined by Reich, prior to this in the Western educational system, there has always been an observation of a life force energy. Baron Reichenbach coined the odic force. Franz Anton Mesmer had knowledge of the animal magnetism. Also, of most relevance here, Rudolf Steiner and his associate Gunther Waltzmuth, who established the chemical ether in their works, The Etheric Formative Forces. Trevor and his late friend, Dr. Walter Stark, a Swiss ion expert, is a well-known physicist and characterized the ether as identical to what the Hindus called prana, which in Vedantic philosophy is the notion of a vital, life-sustaining force of living beings and vital energy. Additionally, comparable to what the Chinese call qi, the life force in Chinese culture. There is a vast scientific and philosophical record of this field dating back to ancient Greece and the American Indian shamans, but this force has never fully been understood or covered by orthodoxy. However, modern experimenters are only just beginning to catch up and reproduce tangible experiments. Making use of his seafaring career and his status as a radio officer, Trevor developed a marine weather engineering system that has been stunningly demonstrated on film. During his 14 years aboard the SS Maui, he was finally able to divorce his cloud-busting equipment from needing a water grounding to work, a substantial step forward. He now opened a new epoch in etheric weather engineering based on biogeometric forms and phi geometry. His technical goal was to directly access the etheric continuum and use its native laws to engineer weather, especially rain. However, there are hurricane management, fog lifting, smog management, and bushfire prevention capacity of this technology. Variants developed in this experimental crucible on the high seas were frequently employed, which included rotating formats on the moving ship and injecting harmonious spiraling motions into the ether by human design. Trevor's real-world progress was documented using very compelling time-lapse video. This video documentation demonstrated that his simple etheric vortex generators worked effectively on the local weather, even through half-inch thick steel 6 decks down within the ship's hull. As the size and weight of his etheric translators were progressively reduced, realization of a long-time dream came within reach, taking etheric rain engineering airborne. By 1994, he had conclusively proved in a series of airborne tests in Hawaii and Malaysia that airborne etheric rain engineering was another new epoch in etheric engineering. The widened horizon from an aircraft, unmatched visibility, and infinite heading control greatly magnified the effects which he had learned to produce in his years of maritime pioneering.
Now, the best way to get a bird's eye view of what's happening here is to act like a bird. Get aboard a sailplane. Up we go. Heading east. The tow plane in front of us. And there's nothing like getting a few hundred feet of altitude to see what's going on. There, to the magnetic east direction, is rain. This was induced by the thrust of the aircraft. As the tow plane curves us in a climbing turn, we get an opportunity to run a nice panoramic shot of central Oahu. As we continue our climbing turn, we are now heading to the west, and you can see the remains of that nice day underneath this blanket of rain-bearing cloud. With the tow plane gone, we're heading back now towards central Oahu, and we're looking at central Oahu over the top of the foothills of the Waianae Range, facing approximately southeast at the moment, and that is socked in. That area is being heavily rained. I would say at the rate of about an inch an hour, based on past experience. We're at 3,000 feet or thereabouts at the moment, and we're starting to get rain up here, and the pilot has indicated that we will very soon have to terminate this. But our altitude gives us unequivocal evidence of rain engineered into central Oahu. No two ways about it.
In the late 80s and early 90s, Trevor documented a series of smog reduction operations in Southern California. These proved the effectiveness of etheric manipulation techniques against smog in an area considered the largest and filthiest smog region in America. Funded by Singapore businessman and entrepreneur George Wu, these operations culminated in a full-season anti-smog operation in 1990, using 14 stations throughout Southern California. Smog came down in that single season by an astonishing 24%, for a total investment cost of $35,000. Federal and state authorities were notified in advance of this smog reduction endeavour using official forms. Despite Trevor's stellar results, California was not interested in the further use of these techniques and had since seen smog expenditures exceed $10 billion with no end in sight since 2003.
The engineering of rain is always an exciting business, thrilling, personally fulfilling, after learning to do it over a period of 20 years. There is always a concomitant benefit to rain engineering, and that is cleaning up the atmosphere. Special variants of these weather engineering devices were developed in 1987 that were incorporated in a project in July of 1987 exclusively intended to test these implosive vertically operating units. These are typical Apache-type units used in Victor. The filing for Victor with the federal government called for an operational period 27 June through 05 August. And in the addendum, two particular items of anticipated effects are worth noting. Frequent and substantial reductions contra forecast of LA basin temperatures, and frequent generation of offshore Catalina eddy activity materially influencing both weather and forecasts. These two items were to come true in spades. In July of 1987, Southern California had its cleanest air in more than 30 years. Everybody concerned with smog, right down to the ordinary citizen that has to inhale it, was utterly astonished by the weather conditions that settled into the Los Angeles basin and stayed there throughout the month. The records are all there if you want to study them in terms of mathematics. What is more important in a presentation of this kind is to get something of the flavor of the chaos that reigned in TV newsrooms amongst weathermen and others as the good weather went on and on in a month that traditionally produces terrible suffering for hundreds of thousands of Californians. Let's take a look at some of those highly informative clips that will tell you exactly what happened when our two translators went into action at Desert Hot Springs on the desert and out at San Pedro on the coast.
Rain that we had this morning, that was not rain. Give you another advantage to this weather. Air quality. Beautiful. No pollution. Comes with the weather. Wait till next week. All right. Now, at 72 in 1926, we tied it for the coldest afternoon temperatures. My quality. How about a first, second, or third stage? Not today. Not with this.
Describe the weather we're having now. One word.
Wet. Gray.
Damp, gray, anemic.
There's a good word.
That's a good word for what happened today. Yes,
Kind of crummy. How about crummy?
crummy. Now that's the word I was fishing.
You really-
Yeah, we've had drizzle out there. We have had a little bit of wind. We've been hearing thunder all around. At least that.
That's strange.
Yeah.
I heard that.
Yeah,
Hey,
she heard
hey.
that. Okay, that's two of us. That's an eyewitness. And again, we did not get any clearing today. The temperatures have not warmed up. It didn't cool off that much, and we've had drizzle and thunder showers out in the desert. So indeed, it's good. The air quality is good in all areas and should remain so until we find summer again lurking around someplace out there.
Been seen in Southern California this century. We have a January cutoff low over us. The jet stream right now is coming in over Palos Verdes. Never happens in July. We've got wintertime weather, and let's get right on over here. This is supposedly a picture of the jet stream. Actually, it's just a flow pattern. It's my 500 millibar motivated. The jet pattern comes down like this. And now you can see it over here this way much better. This is the jet stream right down here underneath these clouds. Actually, this is a picture of humidity. It comes down like this, and here we are in Southern California. There's Palos Verdes. Well, it's actually going over Fountain Valley at the moment. That's the jet stream. And it curls around, and up here, there is the storm just south of Medford, Oregon at the moment. Now, what we expect this thing to do, instead of digging any further, it's still digging a little bit now, is that it'll start going around like this. That's low center, and even by next Wednesday, that should be out there. Now, this, we've seen pictures like this before. Look at the marine layer in there. Want to know something interesting about that marine layer? 7,000 feet thick today. 7,000. Normal for July is 1,500. That is so high that they had drizzle this morning on the top of Mount Wilson. You don't catch things like, and these, notice that pattern? That's a cloud pattern of cold weather, just like January.
Okay. Downtown looked great today. Visibility is not the problem, either is the air quality. However, we're 10 degrees below normal in the temperature department, a high of 73 and a low of 60.
Is when the absolute coldest temperature in California this morning was 23 degrees in Truckee, California.
That's cold.
Yeah, I checked the ski report,
July?
but nobody's open.
The California natives here, we can't recall it ever going this long into July with this bad of weather. It finally cleared up.
Up some rather high clouds in a lot of areas, especially in the San Gabriel Valley. Picked up some rain this afternoon. As you take a look at downtown Los Angeles about an hour or so ago from our Channel 2 weather cam, let me tell all you folks in Riverside that you broke a record today. Yeah, your high temperature was only 74, and you have always been warmer than that. on the 20th of July. So,
Quarter of an inch, Westwood 1/1500th of an inch.
Anything would be a record because we've never had any, have
It's
we?
incredible, and not for many, many years. 9 degrees below normal for this time. It's like February weather.
All right, let's show them what the air quality is. It is good in all areas. As the temperatures start warming up, we will get back up to first stage, but it's nice out there, so go out and breathe early and often. Yeah.
There are people who complain saying that it's too cold. These are the people who work in air-conditioned offices all day and come home to an air-conditioned house at night. But there are a lot of people who don't have either, and boy, they appreciate it. The quality, delightful, oh boy, it certainly is, all up and down.
You ask? Well, he answered with mostly good, moderate out in the valley areas, but nothing like first or second stage smog alerts. And
Be flirting with first stage alerts though in the San Gabriel Valley and also out at Riverside. So we've had really, really super air quality here in Los Angeles for this summer. But
Well, the experts had to leave. We didn't have enough smog.
That's right. They were here this week and they said we have no smog to study, so we'll go home. I don't know.
Air quality, dandy. All right, you can't say any more about that. Jerry had a story earlier about people who came out here to study smog this summer. Didn't find any. Now, yes.
Those people who came to Southern California in that memorable summer of 1987 were scientists. 200 of them were brought here by the Air Resources Board from all over America and from many overseas countries as well. These scientists were organized into some 50 teams and strategically sited throughout Southern California for the most ambitious smog study project in history. Unfortunately for that official project, our Operation Victor, a pilot project, started at the same time, and by the end of the third week in July, the air in Southern California was so clean that it deprived the visiting scientists of the statistical opportunity to gather valid samples. And so they were sent home without malefic intent. I repeat, without malefic intent. Our project, with a $5,000 budget, had put out of action the State Air Resources Board project, which finished up costing the California taxpayer more than $10 million. You see, after Project Victor finished its main phase in August, the smog became terrible again, and they brought the scientists back. So the final bill was over $10 million. Suddenly getting the cleanest air in 30 years sort of threw a monkey wrench into the smog bureaucracy and its ways of thinking and doing things. The whole happening was palmed off as a meteorological fluke. That's the way that it went into the records, a meteorological fluke. And you would not be a person of common sense if you didn't say, Constable, you just got lucky in 1987. It was a meteorological fluke. And what happened in 1988? A good question. In 1988, we did nothing in Southern California, nothing at all. And they racked up the second worst smog season in the entire decade of the 1980s. Now that is correlation number 2. 1989, we entered the smog wars again with a special nexus of events surrounding the whole happening. Pursuant to that terrible smog year of 1988, the smog bureaucracy had drawn up a battery of draconian restrictions that they are now in the process of imposing on Southern California people, business, and industry.
So that's the format in which we filed Operation Breakthrough in July of 1989 and Operation Checker to run through September and October during the 1989 smog season. In a reprise, with a great improvement, the phantoms of 1987 rose again as Southern California experienced its all-time record low year for smog in 1989, with us operating for 3 of the 6 months. Those are the statistical facts, and they are a matter of record. On Friday, 3 November 1989, right after the official number crunchers had finished with the 1989 smog statistics, Maria Cohn of the Orange County Register wrote this story about just how good things were in Los Angeles in 1989. The smog season ended, she said, with Southern California residents breathing the cleanest air in at least 40 years. And over on that right-hand column, you'll see an account of how much better things were in all the traditionally smog-laden communities. To wrap it up, Maria Cohn cites Joe Casmassy, chief meteorologist for the smog people, who simply calls it the best year we've ever seen. There you have 3 correlations between our activities and the state of Southern California smog. Would you like to try for 4? Here for the record is the official federal filing for Operation Clincher. Note that the purpose of the project or activity on this government form is laid out there. Record seasonal reduction of smog 1990, Southern California. There are the dates on the federal form. Preparatory in April, official start May 1, and termination will be on the 31st of October 1990, the full smog season. Filed in advance as required by law on the 6th of April 1990 and signed by yours truly. No saying that we did it after the event. So that is the status in 1990. We're moving on now through June as this is recorded, and you are going to be able to judge for yourself whether or not Clincher clinches the question of our influence. And this is an historic operation in more ways than one. Should Clincher succeed in the fashion that I fully expect, Southern California is going to have the type of air, the quality of air, that it expects to have by the year 2000 if everything goes well using orthodox methods and God knows how many billions of dollars. You can have it right now in 1990. This is all being done, ladies and gentlemen, with an environmentally pure method that doesn't put any electromagnetic radiation into the atmosphere or use chemicals in any form whatsoever. It is environmentally pure. Furthermore, people don't have to worry about being harassed and hectored and hampered by regulations and rules. There is another way to clean up this air, and it's here now. You do not have to wait until you are old and bent and broken for that. We fully expect that Southern California business and industry will support and sustain the Atmos Group in cleansing the Southern California environment. If that does not happen, the Atmos Group will participate no further in cleaning the Southern California air there will be no more clean air from us for free. Wherever you are, when you see this tape, you're involved in the whole question of air pollution. Because if we don't clean it up by a method like this, you are going to be one of those who pays to try and clean it up by bankrupt, out-of-date methods. Please, ladies and gentlemen, remember our credo. Only results count. Let's give these methods a real chance to help mankind.
Trevor's rain and smog operations are recounted in a 1994 book entitled Loom of the Future. The book employs a new literary format in the form of a book-long interview with more than 130 photographs keyed to the text. Loom of the Future provides a historical education in the step-by-step progress of etheric engineering and the problems faced with bureaucracies and orthodoxy not accepting the process due to ignorance and profit motive. Panacea has an extensive researcher's edition of these events in their Cloudbuster production, available on YouTube. Loom of the Future uncovered the developments and disappointments of a quarter century at the forefront of etheric technology. The documentation in this astounding book includes dozens of historic photographs describing the evolution of Trevor's weather engineering instruments, official weather radar maps, and photos describing the dramatic effects of biogeometric instruments, Trevor's incisive and thought-provoking insights into the current world situation, and a clear delineation of the etheric formative forces. In 1991, the Singapore company Trevor formed with George Wu, Aero, was hired by the state of Malacca in Malaysia. Then in drought, working with George Wu and Dr. Peter Lindemann from atop a 32-story hotel in Malacca, he engineered 38 recorded measurable rains during a 57-day dry season period, approximately 75% of a normal annual Malacca rainfall in mainland Malaysia's driest state. Etheric rain engineering provided airborne etheric rain engineering services to governments. Now its fate is uncertain. The greatest difficulty that has plagued the operation since its inception has not been engineering rain or conquering smog, but rather overcoming bureaucratic sloth and the vested interests of the disaster industry that has too much investment in the alternative treatments, where this process is too simple and too cheap, a dilemma that hobbles them to this day. Trevor remains optimistic that the bureaucratic barriers to commercial rain engineering will someday be sufficiently dismantled to allow the world to fully employ the marvellous methodology that he has laboured so long to perfect and bring rain to those many drought-stricken regions of the earth where famine and economic depression now need not exist. The capacity for beneficial research and development on this technology is overwhelming. A portion of this potential was covered in Trevor's book, The Cosmic Pulse of Life, showing awesome scientific discoveries that have been suppressed and advanced technology for the future, radionics, etheric forces, orgone energy, and the history of spiritual science. In Trevor's production, Etheric Weather Engineering on the High Seas, Trevor takes you with him on shipboard to that mighty laboratory of maritime nature, the North Pacific Ocean. Using simple geometric instruments with no radiation or chemicals, Trevor objectively demonstrates that the ether is indeed an incredibly subtle yet tremendously powerful physical force. Before your eyes, the ether undergoes a spectacular resurrection. Deluges descend in response to the pioneer's application of the ether's laws. Time-lapse videotape provides visible, compelling proof of this reality, the master key to controlling and engineering the weather, and therefore, ultimately, climate. Therefore, preventing human misery and environmental damage better than any cloud seeding process could ever achieve. Included were documentation of US government weather maps and shipboard radar. 2.5 decades of quiet pioneering produced the revolution in physics and technology, portended by the scenes on this videotape. The beneficial meteorological knowledge from this weather engineering process is second to none, yet faculties, weather forecasters and governments still have not utilized the knowledge before them. The taxpayer is picking up the bill, and droughts, hurricanes and bushfires are still today creating more unnecessary victims. In Trevor's Orgon Energy Weather Engineering, the Law and the Environmental Crisis, Trevor provides an introduction survey of local, regional, national and planetary control of weather through the manipulation of the primary energy continuum, the ether. Presented with supporting documentation, this survey was intended to inform persons concerned with weather modification techniques, be their concern technical, legal, social, environmental or legislative, of the current capabilities and significance of etheric weather engineering. However, to this day, the technology has never been employed to capacity to lift fog, manage bushfires, treat drought and manage hurricanes. In fact, Panacea contacted an Australian minister about this technology as far back as 2007, prior to the 2009 devastating Victorian bushfires in Australia. This minister is on record knowing about this technology. So who is liable? What of the victims in the Victorian bushfires and around the world? For the same amount of money they raised in the bushfire appeal, they could have set up permanent bushfire prevention stations using this technology. There has to be public recognition and endorsement of this work by responsible public officials, some funding assistance and public awareness of this method before the full potentials and benefits of this discovery will ever be realized. History has shown that those currently trying to perform this activity conventionally, that the system fails the public taxpayer. Our non-profit goals have been to inform the public for what is long overdue, to secure this knowledge as a public record and to create a research and development centre to bridge the gap of stopping this technology and many other neglected technologies from suppression ever again, and also to address the current neglected free energy technologies and medical ones which are suffering the same fate. Until the public know the truth and this honesty is allowed to flourish as is intended in our proposed granted non-profit public research and development centre, we will be, as Trevor states, just be living pathologically, without capacity. It's pure and simple. The following quote is taken from the Etheric Rain Engineering website in their frequently asked questions section. We are reading this out to illustrate how the current climate is and was, and how this technology was forced to be managed. The question read, "You said that Etheric Rain Engineering of Singapore does not actually solicit business anywhere in the world. Why is that? How will you become established?" Trevor answered, "If business of this all-new character is solicited, a client immediately demands a demonstration. This is a normal business reaction in dealing with conventional process and principles. Etheric rain engineering is not just radically new, but something much more. Etheric rain engineering excites emotional opposition because of its unorthodox routing. If confidentiality could be fully protected by a government, there would be little difficulty in the real world. Security evaporates rapidly. Minor government officials and bureaucrats promptly leak the project to their cronies in the media. An opposing firestorm then erupts. Scientists, out-of-power politicians, academics, media clones, and entrepreneurs profiting from the drought unite to denounce in advance our rain engineering operations. With the certainty of sunrise, the media can be relied on to act abnormally and to poison the regional public with lies, distortions, ridicule, and opinions from scientists who still think that there is no ether. We are abused with no fair forum for response. We anchor everything to results, yet bigoted, ignorant editors deliberately instruct their reporters to trash us. This has been our real-world experience. This is why we now require that any government or ruler invite our presence. This changes the socio-political climate completely." End. Panacea has offered a personal non-disclosure and not-for-profit pledge to hold the information as a matter of a public trust for emergency crisis situations, and to only accept grants to perform this public service and not sell the technology to people willing to profit off humans' misery. It is one of the only logical situations to have the information passed on and operated non-profit for humanity. Being able to act independently of governments and corporate profit motive or faculty ignorance is a matter of critical security for building our children a future. For Trevor, who else does he have to pass the knowledge down to, and who can he trust? Who can perform the public service to capacity? Orthodoxy is not yet qualified at this time. What other public face has the capacity at this time? Panacea has heard nothing back from the Australian government since November 2009. From this lack of response, we must realise that it is not just the Australian government, but the system itself which has failed to bring this technology and keep it secure in public hands. The discovery is new to governments and faculties, but has been around since the 50s. It is not in their textbooks, and they are unwilling to investigate further, even under a non-profit, no-obligation situation. We have these proven records. We must create security from faculty ignorance or ignorance from any individual who is not qualified to make the decision, yet has the authority to prevent further investigation. We have to ensure the prevention of any suppression of this clean and cheap technology from any bureaucrat because it threatens their contracts, which are more financially lucrative. If you are a member of the public, faculty and government who can support Trevor's work or help with the Panacea concept, please contact us. Please help all and forward this information to all institutions to help education. Panacea has preserved the complete works of Trevor's for any member of the public, scientific faculty and or sponsor to help advance their education. Please contact us for this information. Lastly, the history of the success of etheric rain engineering work has only been made possible by many gentlemen, as Trevor puts it. Trevor inspired many to aid humanity. These credits include George K.C. Wu of Singapore, a visionary businessman, multimillionaire and entrepreneur who made possible the commercial availability of airborne etheric rain engineering operations. Peter Lindemann, a great friend to etheric rain engineering, as well as possessing a remarkable level of personal sensitivity to etheric force. Peter is a brilliant multidisciplinary engineer who has created many devices ranging from therapeutic equipment to electrical generators. Louis A. Matter served as chief engineer of the SS Maui throughout the 1980s and until his early retirement from the sea in 1992, a professional engineer educated at the California Maritime Academy. Lou Matter's early personal interests were sacred geometry and the art of Tai Chi. The late Dr. Willhelm Reich, who died in a federal prison in 1957, he was the major rain engineering pioneer and innovator with his inspired invention of the cloudbuster. The late biologist Robert McCulloch, he was the link between Dr. Reich's work and that of Trevor's. Bob McCulloch was educated at the Utah State Agricultural College, where he earned a master's degree. Eva Reich, MD, physician and daughter of the great Willhelm Reich scientist. She was a professional associate of Robert McCulloch and her father at Organon in Maine. The late Dr. James O. Woods, a highly valued research associate of Trevor's for more than a quarter century. The late and great Erwin Trent, a veteran electronics technician already retired from the aerospace industry in California. When he met Trevor in 1974, Mr. Trent's first acquaintance with Dr. Reich's work came as a patient of Dr. Albert Duval, one of Reich's closest medical associates. Trevor and Erwin Trent became dear friends as well as research associates for over 30 years. The late William Gordon Allen, PhD, was a graduate of Louisiana Tech who was long associated with Boeing in Seattle, Washington. Dr. Allen headed the interior electronics design group on the Boeing 747 during the birth of the revolutionary jumbo jet. The late Frank de Ewan was an internationally respected aeronautical engineer, airline executive and consultant who was intensely interested in etheric weather engineering as a glimpse of tomorrow. The great Commodore Kenneth R. Orcutt, a Commodore of the Madison Navigation Company's fleet and master of the flagship, the SS Maui, throughout the major development of etheric rain engineering in the maritime mobile mode. Colonel William A. Shower, the first pilot in the history of the world to fly airborne etheric rain engineering operations. He put in 31 years of service as a fighter pilot, and after retirement built a second career in general aviation in Hawaii. The Segretti brothers, Gino and Anthony, helped support and sustain the rugged pioneer years of etheric rain engineering from Fort Zindanoof. Commodore C.C. Wright Jr., who was the first senior master of the Madison Navigation Company and in command of the SS Maui, the Madison flagship, where Trevor joined the ship on her maiden voyage in 1978. The late General Curtis E. Lemay rendered unique personal assistance to Operation Clincher in Southern California in 1990. Full details of his historic seasonal victory over America's worst smog appear elsewhere on the rainengineering.com site. The late Howard B. Spud Moreau, one of the founders of the Moreau's Nut House National Retail chain, was the first man ever to mention to Trevor the notion that the weather could be controlled and rain engineered. Trevor actually derided this idea when it was repeatedly brought up during desert campaigning trips in the early 1950s. Captain Edo Fayen, US Merchant Marine, retired, was for several years a Trevor shipmate as chief officer of the SS Maui. This professional seafarer had been observing and reporting marine weather daily for decades. Ben Gregory, who will be referred to herein simply as Greg, was an ex-US Army soldier on disability who resided across the street from Fort Zindanuth. And lastly, Chicago-born Thomas J. Brown, who has been involved with the development of etheric rain engineering for decades and is a loyal webmaster for the Etheric Rain Engineering Singapore website. For 25 years, Trevor has achieved the best groundwork anyone could have ever hoped for. It's time for this generation to make these results count, to benefit and help achieve one of the greatest moments in humanity's history, the harnessing and awareness of this life force energy for all cultures, and to help create this secure infrastructure for a whole new genre of engineering and research conditions, a reform of the system. Trevor has worked for years to establish the need for this. Needed is security from the elements that kept these and many other inventions away, not only from the taxpayer, but from humanity advancing itself. History and Trevor has shown us many lessons, which has taken years to prove. Trevor is a pioneer and humanitarian who we salute. It is now our responsibility to make his results count. Thank you for watching.